Tuesday evening on the Mount of Olives. After Jesus had spoken to the people and their leaders for the last time on the temple square, he left Jerusalem with his followers. They walked out of the city gate toward their camp, which they had set up on a slope of the Mount of Olives, near Gethsemane. When they had walked a little way up the Mount of Olives, Matthew turned toward the city. From there, he had a beautiful view of the temple. Matthew drew Jesus' attention to this magnificent building. He said, "See those massive stones and beautiful decorations. Why did you say this afternoon that this building and the entire city will be destroyed?" Jesus replied, "You see those stones and that beautiful temple? Truly, truly, I tell you, soon not one stone will be left upon another. They will all be torn down." The Master's remarks about the destruction of Jerusalem and its holy temple struck a sensitive chord with the apostles. They could not imagine any event, other than the end of the world, that could bring about the destruction of the temple. Upon reaching the top of the Mount of Olives, they saw the temple again, glorified by the rays of the setting sun. Without many words, they all sat down and slowly watched the sunset and the city lights come on. They beheld the beauty of the illuminated temple. It grew completely dark, and still the apostles sat close to their beloved Master. Their minds were troubled by the harsh words Jesus had spoken that afternoon against the Jewish leaders. Jesus himself radiated calm, and they saw each other by the soft glow of the full moon. They talked a little about all they had experienced until Nathaniel asked Jesus, "Master, tell us, when will the city of Jerusalem be destroyed?" Jesus gazed at the city and answered thoughtfully, "All right, I will tell you about the time when this people will have filled the cup of its iniquity to the brim. For then the judicial punishment will come upon this city. I will soon leave this earth. I'm going to the Father. Be careful that no one misleads you after I have gone, for many false teachers will come, and they will try to lead you astray. When you hear about wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed, for even though all these things will happen, the end of Jerusalem is not yet near. Do not be disturbed by famines or natural disasters, and you also do not need to be worried when some of you are handed over to worldly courts or persecuted for the sake of the gospel. You will be cast out of the synagogue and imprisoned for my sake, and some will even be killed. When you are brought before governors and rulers, it is a unique opportunity to testify about the gospel of the kingdom. When you stand before a court, do not worry beforehand about what you should say, for the Spirit will teach you in that very hour what you should answer. Difficult times like birth pangs will come. Your own people, under the leadership of those who have rejected the Son of Man, will imprison you, and some of you will even be killed. For a time you will be hated for my sake, but know that even during these persecutions, I will not abandon you. My Spirit will not leave you alone. Be patient. Do not doubt that this gospel will triumph over all enemies and eventually be proclaimed to the entire world." Jesus was silent for a moment as he looked down at the city. He realized that the rejection of the spiritual understanding of the Messiah, the determination to cling blindly to the material nature of the expected deliverer, would soon bring the Jews into direct conflict with the mighty Roman armies. He knew the social undercurrents driven by the zealots and knew that sooner or later they would revolt. And this could only lead to the ultimate and complete overthrow of the Jewish nation. He thought back to when, in his childhood, the Galilean capital, Sepphoris, was destroyed, and also to the many examples he knew of rebellious peoples who had been cruelly crushed by the iron fist of Rome. When the Jewish people rejected the spiritual self-bestowal of the Creator and refused to receive the light of heaven when it shone upon them so full of grace, they sealed their doom as an independent nation. Even the Jewish leaders later acknowledged that the collective belief in a Messiah who would lead an earthly kingdom had led to the turmoil that caused them to lose their own autonomy. As Jesus foresaw the logical consequence that Jerusalem would become the cradle of the early gospel movement, he did not want its teachers and preachers to perish during the destruction of Jerusalem. Hence, he gave these careful instructions to his followers. Jesus was concerned about the possibility that his disciples would get caught up in the impending uprising and thus perish in the fall of Jerusalem. And so he continued, "You may stay in the city after I have gone, and even during the hard times of bitter persecution. But when you hear that Roman armies are about to besiege Jerusalem, then you will know that its destruction is near. Then you must flee to the mountains. Let no one in the city or nearby hesitate to save anything, and let no one who is outside the city dare to enter. There will be great distress, for these will be the days of the vengeance of the Gentiles. The inhabitants of Jerusalem will be slain by the sword or taken captive and scattered among all nations. Thus Jerusalem will be destroyed by the Gentiles. I warn you, do not be deceived. If anyone comes and says, 'See, here is the Savior,' or 'See, he is there,' do not believe him, for many false teachers will arise, and many people will be led astray. They will incite a rebellion against the Roman rulers. But you must not be misled, for I have foretold all this." The apostles sat in silence for a long time in the moonlight as these startling predictions of Jesus penetrated their bewildered consciousness. The apostles faithfully passed on this warning to their followers. For when all of this took place nearly 40 years later, practically the entire group of believers had fled from Jerusalem, and most had found safe refuge in Perea.